Good morning. I'm Mo Ivory in for Roland Martin, who is actually on his way. So you'll see the switch happen, but we'll get it started right now. Congressman Gwen Moore and Congressman Hakeem Jeffries update us on the meeting between the Congressional Black Caucus and President Obama. An NYPD officer is indicted in the shooting death of an unarmed black man. And we've got part 2 of Roland's exclusive with Cheryl Underwood. And our comedians are going to let loose because you know what? It is Wallin' Out Wednesday. All that and more coming up right now on News 1 Now. Congressional Black Caucus members met with President Obama yesterday to discuss a wide range of topics, including reforming the criminal justice system and economic opportunities. In turn, the president asked the CBC for support on trade deals. Here with more are CBC members, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries from the 8th District of New York and Congresswoman Gwen Moore, representing Wisconsin's 4th District. Welcome. So overall, tell me just how was the meeting with the president?
You know, I think the important part of the conversation happened at the end of the conversation. When the president sort of congratulated the Congressional Black Caucus and really being focused and bringing important issues to him that he thought that there might be some agreement on, some ability not only to work with him, which is a foregone conclusion, but being willing to rein in the Republican majority. And I think that's a good starting point. He congratulated us for really being organized in our presentation.
Okay, and so what was the, when walking into this meeting, I mean, of course there aren't, just multitude of opportunities to just have the president's ear and sit with him. What were some of the things that were the most important issues for the CBC to have at this particular conversation?
Well, President Obama has 23 months left in office, and I think the CBC is committed to making sure that he can finish strong on behalf of the communities that we represent and on behalf of the nation. He's done a lot during his first 6 years in office, often in partnership with the Congressional Black Caucus, as well as Democrats in the House and the Senate. And there's some things that we'd like to address with a laser-like focus over the next couple of months. Fixing our broken criminal justice system, which means dealing with the prison industrial complex, the fact that there is mass incarceration that disproportionately impacts the African American community in a way that doesn't make sense for the nation economically, is not consistent with our democratic values. And so we want to work toward reducing mandatory minimum sentences, giving judges more discretion, redirecting nonviolent drug abusers out of the criminal justice system into treatment in ways that states throughout the country have begun to do, but the federal government has yet to get that accomplished. And also continuing to work on job creation. Although the economy has improved significantly under this president, we still have a ways to go. African American unemployment rates are still disproportionately high, and so we'd like to make progress on that as well.
Okay, so when you're in these meetings and you do bring up these issues, what is the response from the president? Are there concrete responses, or are there, we're working on it, we continue to put committees together? Are there concrete answers?
The president was surprised at how easy it was for him to get to yes. On many of these issues. Hakeem mentioned the broken criminal justice system, for example. We had Senator Cory Booker in the meeting, who has worked really diligently with Republicans in the Senate because they're realizing that this is sort of busting the budget to just, trail them, nail them, and jail them. And so there's bipartisan, bicameral support for that. Same thing with the recovery not reaching everyone. We had Assistant Leader Jim Clyburn there focusing in on the most distressed, impoverished districts in the country and saying we need to find some way to bring some relief to those to those census tracts. And they're not Democratic districts, they're not Republican districts, they're not all urban, they're rural, they're Black, white, Latino, so it's real easy to get the president to yes on many of these issues. What we need to make sure that we can bring the Republican majority
into the conversation and into the reform that has to take place, right?
Right.
So we also know that there's been a big fuss and sort of a lot of coverage about Benjamin Netanyahu's visit and the speech that's coming up in March. And many CBC members have said that they will not attend it in protest to sort of the disrespect that this invitation by Boehner has shown to the president. What is the CBC's position on that? Or just individually, how do you feel about that visit and that speech?
Well, I think members of the Congressional Black Caucus have taken different positions. Our chair, G.K. Butterfield, along with John Lewis and others, have indicated affirmatively that they do not plan to attend. I think that every member of the CBC feels as though, certainly I do, that Speaker John Boehner unnecessarily politicized a foreign policy issue as it relates to trying to prevent Iran from the acquisition of nuclear weapons.
Sure.
I think every member of the United States Congress believes that that would not be a healthy thing for our country, for the Middle East, for Israel, for anyone in that part of the world.
Right.
But by proceeding in a manner that breached protocol, in a way that was clearly intended to place a stick in the eye of President Obama, was completely irresponsible in the manner that it was conducted. And I'm hopeful that things can be worked out over the next few weeks in a manner that keeps the focus on the Iranian nuclear question, and we can move away from the political gamesmanship.
Well, what could actually be what could be worked out? I mean, what could be worked out as it relates to that actual speech happening or not, and there being sort of a protest by black politicians, whatever party, that just it was a very big disrespect to the president. What could be worked out? He could.
It wasn't just the Congressional Black Caucus members who said that they weren't going to attend.
Sure, there were many who said they
there are many others in leadership as well. And there is, talk of Netanyahu or the ambassador coming to speak with the CBC, and I just think that would be something that would deteriorate into another sort of no-show. I think that if Mr. Netanyahu, President Netanyahu, could delay his visit, then, as Hakeem suggested, the focus would then be on Iran, right, and those instead of his re-election efforts.
Sure, and one thing we saw yesterday, that the officer in the Akai Gurley murder in New York was indicted, which on the surface feels good. It's just a first step, though. It doesn't say that he will actually be convicted or sentenced or anything like that. What kind of reaction do you feel when you spent so much time dealing with the police brutality that has been going on? What was your immediate reaction to that?
Well, it was a meaningful step in the right direction in the march toward justice for the Akai Gurley family. This incident actually occurred in the Pink Houses development in East New York, in a community that I represent. A few days after this tragedy, where a young African-American man who the police commissioner described as totally innocent, had done nothing wrong, shot to death by a rookie police officer in a manner where at least the district attorney now believes there is probable cause to conclude that a crime was committed. Manslaughter, criminally negligent homicide. We'll see ultimately what a jury determines. But it suggests that in certain jurisdictions, when you have the right district attorney who believes in allowing the facts and the law to dictate the process, then perhaps you can get some measure of justice when an unarmed African-American young man has been killed by a police officer.
Right. Well,
the CBC spent a lot of time talking to the president about criminal justice, and we're going to, as the Congressional Black Caucus, put a package together to further the conversation.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Coming up, finally, an indictment for that police officer involved in the shooting death of that unarmed black man, Akai Gurley. And Roland's one-on-one with comedic queen Shirley Underwood is coming your way in a bit. We have a sneak peek of the wild new season of R&B Divas LA, and it's Wildin' Out Wednesday. Some crazy comedians are in the house, and Roland is now here, so he will be coming up next. Hit me with your thoughts on Twitter at Mo Ivory or at News One, or on the News One Facebook page. It is 9 after the hour. Stay with us. We'll be right back, and so will Roland.
All right, folks, welcome back to News One Now. I just got off an airplane. I was in San Francisco yesterday at the Emerson Collective, moderating a panel dealing with the movie Selma with one of its producers. And so just landed. Glad to be with you today. Let's go right to our panel. To my right, Linda McAllister, of course, radio talk show host in Pittsburgh. Also to my left, Angela Rye. Of course, she is with Impact. And Monique Presley, lawyer here in D.C. And, of course, Mo Ivory, as well, of course, co-host of the Frank Ski Show, and thanks for sitting in while I was racing down the freeway trying to get here.
No problem.
Let's deal with this. Let's deal with this issue. First of all, the indictment in Brooklyn. The point that Congressman Jeffries made, I think, is a critical one. The individual who is the DA. This is a prime example of what happens when you have somebody who is not in the pocket of police, who understands that you have to look at what's happening with the residents there, and in fact, this same DA, this is the third case where he has indicted officers for police misconduct. This is exactly how the system is supposed to work, Lenny.
Yeah, you're right. The bottom line is it's supposed to be justice for all. You want to keep people on both sides of the bed safe, but oftentimes when it comes to police officers in the community, it's more about keeping the police officers safe than the community. And when you have a DA that's going to be impartial and look at these types of things, not necessarily go too far and go for a second-degree murder or something along those lines and overcharge, go for something that's appropriate. Manslaughter. This was negligence. This is something that needs to be addressed. This is an appropriate action, and I hope to see that justice is served in this.
What is stunning about this case is the 6 minutes after Gurley was shot, they're not on the phone with 911.
No.
They are texting their union delegates.
Yes. And that too often, Roland, is exactly what happens and gets the wheel starting that begins the process of let's make sure that there cannot be an indictment. So the steps are put into place. Make sure there's no record. Make sure that we have certain pieces of evidence, hidden or put away or whatever. There becomes a log that then taints the ability or taints the people involved from being able to find an indictment. I'm just really glad in this case that did not happen. But this is just a first step. I don't want to get overexcited about what an indictment means because an indictment is the first step.
But here's the deal, though. I know it's the first step. Okay, but the shock is when a cop is indicted.
No,
so the shock is not when they're not indicted. The shock is, oh my God, a cop is actually indicted for wrongdoing.
I'll totally get that.
When there was not an indictment in the Eric Garner case, and one thing that I think has been interesting is folks have asked the question, and I think it was in a recent post. Is this making up for the Eric Garner case? And no, these are two separate black lives. And this is a situation where justice needs to be served regardless of if you're wearing the badge of the law or not.
Sure.
Right, but each life is separate, and I agree, but the facts of this case were also very distinct. So I think while some people may be relieved that there was an indictment here, I don't think that we should be, because what we're looking at here was a completely, looks like accidental happening that never should have happened. A police officer whose gun never should have even come out of the holster. We need indictments where the calls are much closer, where there is engagement, where there is a justification for use of some force, but they're not using appropriate force. This also concerns me because those who are fighting for outside prosecutors don't get a win from what happened here. This is what prosecutors are supposed to be. You don't have to have an outside one to get a prosecutor who does the right thing. And a prosecutor is supposed to be on the side of the state and on the side of the citizen.
But here's the deal, though. But here's the deal, though. First of all, keep in mind, Kenneth Thompson, when he became Brooklyn DA, the individual who he beat, Charles Hines, who had a history of his office not being able to prosecute cases clearly, and in fact, Thompson has had to free individuals who were wrongly prosecuted by the previous DA.
Yeah, when you have these type of situations where you have so much politics mixed into the mix, and you have the type of pressures that you see in these big cities, and at some point in time you have to be able to remove yourself from that. Now, it's good to be able to see a DA have the courage to actually be impartial and move in this direction. I'm hoping that this is more of a trend. I mean, we saw this in Charlotte, where at first we didn't have an indictment, and then eventually we did have an indictment of the CMPD police officer down there as well.
Yeah, but what happened in the Charlotte case, though, the initial grand jury chose not to indict. Then the state attorney general took the case over. The DA there recused himself. The state attorney general took it to a second grand jury, and that's when that cop was indicted for killing Jonathan Farrell.
True, but at least we're seeing progress, and I think that we're starting to see more prosecutors understand that there has to be more of an impartial review of these type of situations, unless you're going to continue to see the protests in the streets until something definitely does change.
Well, I think in the case in Charlotte is a perfect example. If you don't get a special prosecutor, then you still take it out of the hands of that local DA.
Exactly
yes.
right.
And let's just be clear, okay? Do we have the photo of Kenan Thompson? I need y'all to pull that up, please. Let's just cut to the chase. He's black. No, guys, that's a Kai Gurley. I need the DA. The DA, Kenan Thompson, he's African American. You can look at the same thing what happened in Texas, where you had the district attorney in Dallas County, Craig Watkins. If it wasn't for him becoming DA, the number of individuals who were freed because of DNA, that wouldn't have happened.
And I think going back to Lenny's point that he just raised, he said, you know, this is progress. I wouldn't necessarily mistake having people who understand this challenge in positions of power to be progress necessarily. We still, again, it's 2015, but last year and the beginning of this year, we were faced with several non-indictments. And I think that that demonstrates clearly that we haven't seen as much progress as this country.
Yeah, and I think progress is also, I thought you made a very excellent point about progress will be when we see a case that is clearly outside of the bounds of any kind of justice, like Eric Garner, like all actually receive an indictment. This is a very easy case to look at and say, okay, obviously he had negligent behavior, obviously we're going to move forward. I would like to see this, like again I said, go to conviction and for him to, you know, pay for whatever happened, but I would like to see the most egregious of situations that have gone with no indictments begin to follow this same kind of process.
Roland also
that would be progress.
Roland has a point as well when you say that the vast majority of the time, even these situations don't find an indictment. So there is a little bit of progress. Now the question is this going to be an isolated incident, or are we going to see more DAs across the country say, listen, we have to be more impartial lest we get a different type of pressure from the people in the streets?
Will we see more black DAs or DAs in general?
Hold tight 1 second. I got to go to break right now. Folks, we'll continue our conversation with our panel. We'll also deal with some other issues as well, including the Jackie Robinson West Little League team. This is breaking news. They have been stripped of their U.S. baseball title for ineligible players. We'll explain to you also. This summer, folks, the Jackie Robinson West Little League team became the first all-African-American team to ever win the United States Little League baseball title. Well, that history has now been wiped out. Just a few moments ago, Little League Baseball stripped them of their regional title and their U.S. title because the coach used ineligible players. They grabbed players from outside of their boundary. In fact, they also used an illegal map. The coach has been suspended, as well as the Illinois District 4 Administrator Michael Kelly. He has been removed from his position. He was supposed to investigate the eligibility of all of the players. And so now that is gone. Of course, you just saw the video when the Jackie Robinson West, that team paid a visit to the White House with President Barack Obama. I'm going to go to our panel. This is, you know, here's what's so sad about this story. There was lots of attention. You had all of these folks putting the focus on them. You also had Monet Davis playing as well. And so for these kids, they relished that moment. Now it's wiped out. Now their character is now questioned because of the action of adults.
And you know as well as I do, you were on the south side of Chicago, they needed something to uplift them. These kids didn't do anything illegal themselves. They were invited to play baseball, they put the discipline in, they put the time in, and they won. They went over all kind of odds in order to win this. There had to have been something other than stripping them completely of the title where the kids still get some type of acknowledgement for what they did while the adults are punished. Right now, unfortunately, it's putting this cast on all of them, and this is something that they will carry with them for quite some time.
Well, and apparently one of the coaches of a team that got drilled like 42-2 was the one who filed a complaint, complaining. I wonder if he filed a complaint because he got that butt kicking.
Well, of course he did.
And they gave up 42 runs in 4 innings. So it's not like it was a whole game. So yeah, so you have that. But then also the team in Las Vegas who lost to the Jackie Robinson West team, they also complained because they weren't happy about them getting drilled as well. But again, I think what's sad is that for these kids, it was a great accomplishment. And look, you don't know where in the head kids coming from, but this is where adults screwed up.
Well, this happens. This is not something that parents don't have an open eye to in Little League and in youth sports, that coaches are using kids that are not the age they say they are or ineligible. But I'm so unhappy to hear about this. I ordered the t-shirt online, had my whole family sitting and watching. And this was happening during a time that we were having much unrest in our country, right? We had these little boys place to say, oh my God, look at what they're doing in Chicago where all the murders are happening. Things are going so well. So it's so disappointing that the adults around, even the parents, because I'm going to dare say that some parents, at least the ones of the kids that were ineligible, knew that this was going on, did not stand up and say anything and put these kids, all of the team, in jeopardy of this happening. It's awful.
Well, the fact of the matter is everybody knows that this is going on.
Exactly.
And I know Mo would probably back me up here. This is a racket. The circuit is a racket in that they go and they scout and they pull children from other areas. They lie about where they've come from. Parents are even holding their children back so that they can be larger to be eligible to play. So while it's unfortunate, I think the real lesson here is that right is right and wrong is wrong. You know, I think that these children are going to have to take the hard lesson, and it is the adults' fault, but it's necessary.
Angela.
Yeah, I don't know about a widespread racket at all, but what I do know is for all of us who were so very proud of these young people, it's a tarnished history instead of a strong legacy. And I think it's unfortunate. It is Black History Month, so I can't help but to think about the historical impact of that. The fact that we always have to be not just twice as good, but certainly above reproach.
I want to bring another sports story up that a lot of people may not realize, and I think it's really interesting. There's this young man named Roquan Smith out of Georgia. He's an All-American linebacker, and last week we had National Signing Day. Well, he chose not to sign his letter of intent. Now, what's amazing about this story is that by him not signing the letter of intent, he is not governed by the rules there. So what happens when you sign a letter of intent, when you sign that, you are locked into that school for 4 years. You can't go anywhere else. You can't transfer. If you do, you lose eligibility. But by him not signing, he says, I'm retaining all of my rights and privileges, and I now get to now control my fate. I would think that Curt Flood, the brother who sued Major League Baseball that actually led to free agency, he lost in the Supreme Court, he has to be smiling saying, man, that brother right there, and this is going to change the game for the elite players who say, wait a minute, I could just sign the financial aid agreement. I don't need to sign that letter.
Especially if you have the grades. And if you look at what's come out with the union movement from Northwest University, this is almost a natural outshoot of that, where athletes are now saying, wait a minute, we make all this money. You're going to give me, in essence, $30,000 a year to make you millions, and I put my career on the line. And by the way, I'm supposed to stay here at least 3 years before I can make any real money? No, let's change the rules a little bit.
And the reason he backed out is because the coach who was recruiting him at UCLA, right after National Signing Day the next day, he left UCLA to go to the NFL. So Roquan Smith is saying, whoa, wait a minute, hold up. You were recruiting me, but you leave. And the way the rules are, the moment he signs that letter of intent, even if he changes his mind 24 hours later, he has to get their permission to leave, and they can deny him a release from that letter. I think this young brother is playing the game smart, and I hope a lot of other parents out there are paying attention, saying, wait a minute, I didn't realize we don't have to sign that letter to go to that school to get a scholarship.
I was so proud of the strategy. I was so proud of the information and the way the family used what they knew, because so many families don't use what's out there to make good decisions, because they just want their child to go to a big school, to get that scholarship, and to be a name player. And they don't think about the ramifications behind it that this young man and his family thought about that really ensure his future in a better way than would have if he signed the letter. So I was very proud of him.
Right, it's the same thing. I was looking at your Twitter feed this morning. You were talking about it, about Black reporters and media and being enterprising, and we need to see the enterprising in the athletic field as well. We need better advice for children who are younger, because these are kids at the time that they're considering these letters of intent, and it changes the trajectory of their entire career, the decisions that they're making right now. So I thought that this was something good and that we'll see a trend.
And Angela, that's a legal document. So what happens is the NCAA, they literally hold that kid to that, and that document, that letter of intent, decides their entire future. This kid is now saying, no, wait a minute. The financial aid document is really the most important one. So he now can sign that one, get financial aid, but if anything changes with the school, he can actually now go somewhere else and be seen actually like any other student, as opposed to, no, we're going to have a separate rule for these athletes. And I hope there are some mothers and fathers who have kids who are major players. Look, if you a no-star kid or 1 or 2 star, this ain't gonna work.
Right.
But if you a 3, 4, 5 star,
Right.
this can change the game.
Well, the one thing that I thought about immediately when you talked about this, we've been watching kind of the NCAA rules and the fact that athletes have been pushing back on this and the grumblings have grown louder. Well, the initial tipping point, I think, is with the Fab Five back in the day at Michigan and the way that they push back. Like, you make all this money off of us.
Right.
We're going to wear black socks. We're going to, you know, like they did all these things to demonstrate their leadership on the court and their own power. This is to a whole nother level. And so to your point, I do hope that other athletes follow suit. You don't owe them anything. It's not really, in contracts they say it's a bargain for exchange.
Right.
It's an unfair exchange. So hold your power.
Well, parents out there, if you don't know who Curt Flood is, trust me, go get the book. Because he actually, the reason that's free agency is because of that brother suing Major League Baseball. So I'm glad to see what these young brothers are doing as well. Lainey, Angela, Monique, Mo, I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Coming